listening to police scanners on my day off. After reading through quite a few stories on the internet, I can tell I'm not the only one. Like many of you, I have also heard my fair share of weird and unsettling information over the scanners. But only one ever really unsettled me to the point that I considered turning off the scanner for good. I was sitting in my recliner with the news on mute, and the scanner turned up as I sipped a glass of sangria and relaxed after dinner. Generally, I just kind of zone out, only tuning back in fully when I hear something interesting going on. It was late in the evening, and when I heard a code 187 calmly but quickly relayed through the scanner, I instantly came out of my trance. For those of you who don't know, code 187 is the code for murder or homicide. I listened intently as the officers quickly mobilized and prepared to head to the address given by the dispatcher. Nothing unusual happened for a bit. At this point, it was simply the situation that was extreme, not the details about it. Murder, while horrible, is nothing new, right? Well, that's where this gets interesting. I listened as they approached the address. When they pull up, an officer points out that the house looks as if it has been abandoned for a long time, but the front door is wide open. The radio goes silent for a bit after this, but in a few moments I hear an officer call out that him and his partner are going in to check out the house. The dispatcher confirms the information, and it goes silent as the officers head in. For a while, nothing happens. There is some chatter as another pair of officers head towards the location, but other than that, nothing. As I sit and wait for more information, a blood-curdling shriek emits from the police scanner, causing me to drop my glass and break it as I cover my ears. After the shriek subsides, I hear panic chatter from the pair of officers who pulled up at the address just moments ago. The house is apparently on fire now, but one of the officers swear they see a figure making its way through the flames. Her partner is trying to calm her down, but the officer ignores her as her shaking voice crackles through the scanner about an impossibly large human shape making its way around the back of the house. I quickly switch stations to confirm that the fire department is being dispatched before switching back to the police feed. There is a lot of yelling and screaming, and I hear the officer that was trying to calm down the other one say that he's going to give chase to the possible suspect that disappeared behind the house, telling his partner to stay in the car and keep an eye on the front in case the suspect tries to circle around. At this point, I'm not even sure if they realize the radio is still on, or if it is getting ignored amongst the chaos and panic. I can soon hear the sirens of fire trucks getting closer before the sound becomes almost deafening. I can't hear much as the sirens are so loud they drown out any other noise. I wait for around 15 minutes before finally turning off the radio and walking to the closet in the kitchen to grab a broom and a dustpan to clean up the broken glass. I sit back down and stare at the television before deciding to check the police scanner one last time, and then head to bed. I turned it on. and all I hear is screaming. Screams of horror and pain that are nearly as loud as the sirens from earlier. I try to listen as closely as possible despite this. A sick sense of curiosity wanting to glean some kind of information from the radio that, at this point, was clearly left on. As I listen, I hear a small voice whisper the words, "Dear God, no," before a wet thud and a roar come through the scanner. I hear the sound of crushing metal before I quickly shut it off and simply stay seated for nearly an hour before going and laying down in my bed, where I spend the whole night trying to sleep and failing miserably at it. I finally drift off at around 10 in the morning and don't wake up until 6 in the evening. I woke up already curious as to if there was any news. I walked into the kitchen and made a cup of coffee before going to sit back in my chair and turning on the local news station. A reporter stands in front of the remains of a burnt house, reciting information from a police report. Let me just sum it up for you. The two officers that went in to investigate the homicide were killed in the fire, but not by the fire. They apparently both had their throats slashed before the fire was set. The weird thing from the report about this, though, was that the wounds were quickly cauterized right after and had nothing to do with the house fire. They also found another body they have yet to identify. Well, I should say they found body parts, as the remains were spread all over the burnt remnants of the house. Another officer was found burned to death behind the house. That wouldn't be so odd if it wasn't for the fact that the body was found nearly half a mile away from the house itself, surrounded by scorch marks that strongly suggested he had been burned right there, and not in the house fire. The officer that stayed in the car was found mangled underneath the police car she had just been sitting in. The car itself was flipped over, and they had to move it just to retrieve the body. Hers was the only one that had no burn marks whatsoever, something that still continues to perplex me. All of that was disturbing and creepy for sure, but honestly, that is far from what scares me. Whatever or whoever was there that night was never found. Police searched for days. On top of that, I was the only one to hear the screams and roars. Nobody else listening to the police scanners that night heard anything but silence, as their radios had all been broken long before I heard the first. That is what truly keeps me from sleeping. The worst part is, there are some days when I smell smoke lingering around my house, and I see small patches of burnt grass appear occasionally in my front yard.